I remember sitting in the office and everything's falling apart all around me, and just came to my mind the idea that I'm in charge of the business. The business is not in charge of me. Part of the decision was, well, we can go and do this business because I have a business degree. I studied this in university, so I know what I'm doing. Oh boy, was I wrong.
Welcome to Homegrown CEO, the podcast for entrepreneurs, leaders, and business builders seeking actionable insights to grow their ventures and themselves. I'm your host, Matt Colborn, and today we're diving into the impact personal growth has on our business ventures. Everyone's personal development journey looks a little different. My own journey as an entrepreneur will look very different to yours as a fellow founder and business leader. But one thing remains constant: personal growth equals business growth. Joining me today is Nathan Turner, an entrepreneur and mortgage investment expert whose journey has been anything but straightforward. After a tremendous business loss during the 2008 financial crisis, Nathan's resilience and skill has turned a devastating situation into a true opportunity for change. He's since gone on to become a trusted name in the world of mortgage investments, runs an annual conference and an investment fund based on his newfound expertise. In our conversation today, Nathan opens up about the real turning points that shaped him, from that painful business collapse to the mindset shifts that changed everything. So whether you're in the middle of a career change or are just looking to open your mind to what you could do differently, you'll get some great new strategies for making tough decisions, learning from failure, and facing the unexpected. Without any further ado, let's welcome Nathan to the podcast. Before we get into the deeper lessons, when you look back across your career, what are some of the things that stand out to you as the biggest personal shifts that you had to make to keep evolving?
A few things. So when I had our first business, it was the Curves franchise, and it was a gym for women. That was the first time I'd really worked for myself, and so I guess kind of the realization that it's up to me. There's nobody that's going to do this task or that task, and within reason. There are some times where I could give away jobs, but at the end of the day, I fell back on me. So just, I guess, the realization of that and working through that and understanding how to get things done and being, self-motivated to get out there and get some work done. That was a big one. And then not letting that go too far, where then I had to set boundaries and say, okay, work hours, we're 9 to 5, generally speaking, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, but setting those kind of boundaries, that kind of thing, that was an important shift as well.
So no one's ever done a business before they do one, but did you always see yourself as someone who would run a business, or did you kind of fall into that a little bit more accidentally?
Yeah, total accidental. I never had any desire. I never had any grand plans or dreams of owning a business or running my own business. So it kind of just happened. And as I got into it, I realized how much I actually really enjoyed it. There are certain things where you can prepare all you want, but you're never going to understand it. You're never really going to get it until you're in it. So opening a business is one of those. Having children is one of those. There, even being married is one of those where you think you know what it's like and you think you know how it's going to go, and then you get into it and it's just different. So it's, being open to learning as you go, I think, is a big part of it.
And do you find that that openness and having to learn as you go is that more about being driven by a pressure, or is it more about the opportunity that might come from that openness?
It's a little bit of both. I would say mostly the opportunity, but there are times where it's thrust upon you and you just got to figure it out. And so sometimes necessity, but I like to look at it more as an opportunity. And I think I've probably grown into that more, where I look for challenges that I see as opportunities now. That's been fun.
I think that's an important place to start, because a lot of people often think that growth happens when things are going well, either for yourself personally or for your business or for your family. But often it actually happens when life or business forces a shift you would never have chosen for yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
So you said that you never thought you would really ever run a business.
Mm-hmm.
Take me back there about how you got into Curves, a gym for women.
Yeah.
And what did you think that your life was going to look like when that opportunity appeared and you started in that business?
Yeah, so we actually need to go back one more step. So I was graduating from university. I'd actually taken business in university, but I had no intention of ever running a business. I needed a degree. And so my thinking behind that was I was going to take a business degree because I figured that was the most broadly applicable field of study that I could go into. So my plan was actually to become a teacher like my dad. So I applied for the job, and I finished my semester, and that, within weeks we got the answer that I didn't get the job. Okay. So I was like, oh shoot, now what? And so after a lot of debating and really thinking about what we wanted to do, and partially, we're young and it's just the two of us. And so we thought, let's have an adventure. Let's go figure something out and go do something. So I had lived in Korea previously, so we decided let's go to Korea. That'd be fun, and go teach English. We had a wonderful time doing that. We had what a great time for us. We're newly married. We'd only been married 8-9 months, and we took off to a place where it wasn't easy to call home. Email was relatively new. Cell phones were brand new, so it wasn't the kind of thing we could just call home on a regular basis. Plus, then we were able to pay off all of our debts and all those kinds of things. And so it was a great start for us. And then it was as we were getting near the end of that time, with about 3 or 4 months left to go, and we started thinking, we're going to have to go home here pretty soon. Then what? And it was at that time, my mother and my father-in-law, totally separately, had sent us information about Curbs, about this gym for women. And my mom had become a member, so she loved it. And my father-in-law had, I think it was a Time magazine article that he'd come across. And so he sent that to us. And so separately, we looked at those things and thought that's a little more than coincidental that both of them would be talking about this same thing. And so it was to the point where I think we looked at it and we, saw what the costs were to get involved and all the different things. And it's that spark right at the very beginning where you go, I think we could probably do that. And then to make it even more interesting, it was going to, the only place that was left for franchise opportunities was in Quebec, Canada. So that's the French speaking part of Canada. So I had been in French immersion when I was a little kid.
Okay.
So I still had some French rolling around in my head. And my wife had lived in France for 1.5 years. So she had learned French while she was there.
Okay.
So both of our second languages. And we thought, yeah, I think we could do that. Let's do it. Again, we're up for an adventure. Let's give it a shot. And we thought we'd live there for 1 year. That turned into 19 years. And, that's just kind of where life takes you. But that was it. Just that very beginning part of it where we're looking at it and we're thinking about it and rolling it around. And then that little spark that says, I think we can do that. After that, it's all downhill.
Well, I love that specific moment and that spark where it changed for you from interesting idea to we can actually do this. What did starting that business unlock for you and your wife personally?
What a roller coaster in the best way, and it was very steep learning curve. I thought part of the decision was, well, we can go and do this business because I have a business degree. I've got, I studied this in university, so I know what I'm doing. Oh boy, was I wrong. And I felt as we got into it, I felt terribly unprepared to be able to actually open and run a business. I felt like the training that I had in university really prepared me to be a middle manager and nothing more. And I'm sure that has part to do with I probably wasn't paying as close attention as I should have, but I really didn't feel very well prepared at all. Anything from making projection sheets of how we thought this business could go, to making plans for marketing, to hiring, like all these different things, these different parts of the business that I definitely never studied in school, but they were essential parts of what we're doing going forward. So we would research, we'd talk to friends, we'd talk to family and say, so how did you guys do this? And what do you think about this? And got lots of great advice, lots of people that kind of just rallied around us to help us figure out what to do next.
So it's interesting that you share that story so openly, because a lot of founders actually don't start a business, or they delay starting a business because they don't really feel ready. You actually did feel ready and believed you were primed, ready to go. But then during that experience, you've realized, geez, there's a lot of things that I'm not ready for at all. Take me through that internal shift where you stopped seeing yourself as someone who thought they were ready and realized, geez, I've really got to find a new way here.
It happened very early on. So I'll give you one example. Before we'd even opened our first club, we were looking at dates. So we had moved back to Canada. We were in Montreal, close to where we were going to be opening our first location. And the decision we had, it was our first real decision. And it's, do we open in June, right at the beginning of the summer, which historically for a gym is its slowest time?
Okay.
Or do we wait until September when school gets back in and it's a gym for women? So that's when the moms are, more freed up and they can do their working out and all those things. So that was the first real big one. Do we open earlier and have a slower start, or do we wait until September and have a stronger start? And in our minds, we thought, well, let's go for the stronger start. We'll hang on. We'll wait these 3 months, do some more preparations, whatever it might be, and then have a strong opening. And it was my brother-in-law, who was one of our mentors when we first got started and still is today. But he said, did you run the numbers? And we went, what do you mean? I don't know what that means. Yeah. So he showed us on we created a spreadsheet and looked at possible timing, possible openings. And in doing that exercise, it was completely opposite of what we had thought. We thought it would be worth it to wait and just have that stronger opening and have a real big boom when we got going. And in fact, it was far more beneficial, more economically beneficial to actually have a slower start for 3 additional months. And then it turned out that it was a stronger start than we had planned on. And so that even better. But we wouldn't have gone ahead with that if we hadn't run the numbers. But I didn't know anything about what that meant. Even after my entire degree and everything, that was something I'd never had the exercise of doing before. And I didn't know anything about it. So that was a great one where it was very different than what we had logically thought out, but the exercise of just run the numbers. And so we say that to people all the time. They'll come and ask for business advice or what about this? What do you think? And we'll say, well, have you run the numbers? And they'll say, what do you mean? And I'm like, let's do it.
So you told us earlier before we caught up that the Curve story ends in a decline and ultimately a poor performance for the business. Did it run well for a period of time, or did it always struggle to get going?
Actually, it went really well. We were in the province of Quebec. There were about 100 clubs, and within the first 6 months, we were probably in the top 3. We were one of the largest in the whole province, and so we did really, really well with that. We had a great culture, really great employees. Everything was really rolling. That's when we decided to open a second location in the same town. Okay. We knew right before we got started that it likely, just knowing the demographics of the area, it was not likely to be as strong as the first one, but it still made sense. And we ran the numbers and we thought, well, yeah, it still seems like it's worth it. That second one, it did exactly what we thought it would. It did okay, but never great. But that first club really was one of the flagship locations for the whole province. And so that was something we were really proud of. So it was good while it lasted.
So you've got a flagship location. You're starting to expand to a second location in the same area. Take me back to that period where things started to struggle or even started to go wrong for the Curves business. What did that season actually feel like for you day to day?
Oh boy, we had some unexpected challenges. The ultimate decline was 2008 when everything just went sideways. And when people get nervous about finances, they cut their gym membership. And that's one of the things you try to save money on. But even before that, we had some fairly significant challenges. So for example, we had, you have an initiation fee when you get started. and everywhere else in the rest of Canada and the rest of the United States, it was a $200 charge, and it would go down to $100 if you signed up on your first visit. And so the province of Quebec came in, and I'm not exactly sure what sparked it, but they had a real bee in their bonnet about gyms in general, and they decided to single us out. So they came in and changed the laws just for our province, where the most we could charge is $100. If they signed up on their first visit, it was only $40. So it was a significant chunk of our revenue right off the top. And that was a struggle that it wasn't what our numbers were in the beginning. And so that created a challenge, but it was something that we overcame. We still figured it out. We were still able to make things work. But really, as things started to go down, that second location that we'd opened, because it wasn't as strong to begin with, that was where the cracks really started to show. And we were having trouble paying rent. And I would, have multiple meetings with our landlord and trying to help him to understand what we're doing. And then we're pulling money from the first one to help prop up the second one. And that happened, probably around late 2006, early 2007, somewhere in there. And then the writing was on the wall, so we had listed our clubs for sale, thinking we were going to do so well, and each one was going to be for $200,000 each. By the end, in 2009, probably about summer, fall of 2009, it ended up that the two locations had been consolidated into one. We'd closed the second one and brought everyone back over to the first club. And the total sale price at the end of the day was $20,000. So a significant change from what we thought we were going to do. So that was not the best time, but a tremendous time of growth, but difficult.
So that experience of it going well, decline, struggling, day-to-day operations, and then eventually the unfortunate demise of it. Do you feel you took more away from the experience of operating that business, or do you feel that you took more out of the experience of having to walk away from it?
The whole experience, there are still things that I think about now, and it's interesting. I've been asked before, do you have any regrets? I really don't. We were doing the best that we could with the knowledge that we had and the skill set that we had. So I don't feel like, ashamed or anything like that. I feel like we were doing the best we could. And I can be proud of what we were able to accomplish despite everything else that was going on there. And so there was one time I remember sitting in the office and everything's falling apart all around me, and just came to my mind the idea that I'm in charge of the business. The business is not in charge of me. And that was a major turning point. And even though that didn't help anything get better, it cemented in my mind, I'm in charge and nobody's going to, run me. I'm going to just do this. And so it helped me just kind of put those blinders on and no, we're just going to deal with this. We're going to figure it out, but not make decisions out of fear. We're just going to be as logical. We're going to do this as the best we can.
So you've shared that in one of those crisis moments, you had that thought, I run the business doesn't run me.
Yes.
Share with us a little bit more around that mindset shift. Was it as much a survival mechanism as anything else?
It was definitely a survival thing, but it's really become a mantra, and it's something that we've used going forward in any business. The business I'm doing today, there's always ups and downs. And so as much as you have to just roll with the punches, at the same time, understand that you're in control. So if something's going well because you're controlling it, great. If it's not going well, take back control and direct it, and don't let it just toss you around. And just making sure that you're the one making the decisions and doing it intentionally and not just allowing things to happen to you.
So you talk about one of the strongest lessons from your journey is not making decisions based on fear. How did you learn from that? And how do you tell the difference between fear and good instinct now?
I find it very useful for myself is when I'm in a situation, it's so easy to get in your own head and just start thinking, well, what about this? What about that? And if that happens, then, and it's a lot of ifs and it's a lot of like buts and all those kinds of conversations. And if you can remove yourself, and it's not an easy thing to do, but if you can remove yourself from the situation, even just for a few minutes, and maybe that's going for a walk, maybe that's, I don't know, doing something to just break the negative momentum and just letting it sit for just a minute. And then you can come back to it and look at it objectively and logically and without all the what ifs and oh no's and all those different things, but come back to it and say, okay, this is the situation. Here's what's going on. How are we going to approach this? And really taking charge of whatever that situation is.
You talk about going for a walk. What other processes or techniques do you have for slowing yourself down to buy that bit of time?
Here's something I would recommend not doing. Don't go on your phone. Don't, going and start scrolling. That's not going to be helpful. Something physical is really helpful. So going for a walk, that's one of the, simplest, easiest things that you can do pretty much all the time. Even if it's cold outside, even if it's raining or snowing or something, that's fine. Just do something, but just break away. If you can do something more than that, and my wife and I try to do this on a somewhat regular basis, we'll actually take a trip now. And again, just to remove ourselves from whatever else is going on in life, and that's work, family, kids, all the stuff, and just take a step back so that you can approach it in a different light and look at it from an outsider's perspective, instead of just being head down and in what you're doing.
So after such a difficult experience, yes, a lot of people would have really closed off. But your story actually goes the other way. You stayed open, and that led you into mortgage investing. Share with us a little bit about, how that next chapter began for you.
Yeah, it was as we were winding down the curves. So it was, I think I was approached by a friend of mine. It was fall of 2008. So this was, after things had already started going crazy and we were hearing all about it on the news and all those things. And he approached me and it was born from that situation. And I knew that the curves was winding down. In my mind, it's going to sell any day. So I need something else to do anyway. So that's fine. We started off in this project where we had no operating budget. We had no other direction. They just wanted us to fix the mess. They were already at a tremendous loss. They had bought this portfolio in 2007 in the springtime, right at the height of the market. And by now it had lost too much value. There was no way to recover that. So now it was just do what you can, try to make some lemonade out of these lemons. And so we had researched, we had looked at different people that doing different things, and we had settled on a strategy where we were going to sell these houses on terms. So instead of renting them out, because they all needed work and we didn't have any money to do the work. So we sold it on terms, meaning that the person coming into the house, they would pay a down payment. We'd set them up on a monthly payment plan, but all of the maintenance, all of the repairs that needed to be done to the property, that was their responsibility. The tagline we were using at the time was own this house for less than rent. And it worked extremely well, where people would put this, I think we were only doing a couple $1,000s down payment. And then they could start owning this property with these monthly payments and start, actually building equity in what they were doing instead of just having it go to rent. I'm actually on the other side of things. So I let somebody else sell the house on terms and create what we call a note. So a mortgage or a deed of trust, whatever it is. And then I approach them and say, well, I'll buy that mortgage from you. So instead of the lender collecting those payments, they transfer that over to me. Now I collect the payments. And it's kind of come full circle. It's been fun for that.
And one of the things that you shared with me earlier is that you began seeing how your success changed from genuinely being able to help homeowners as well. Share with me a little bit more about that change.
Yeah, it was great. So again, it was early on. We had been doing this project where we were acquiring property, selling it on terms, doing that. And then I had the opportunity in 2010 where I could buy, they called it non-performing notes. So these were mortgages where people were not making any payments. When I first heard of that, I thought that sounded ludicrous. I thought that was crazy, terribly risky, until I got my head around it and I started to understand how it could actually work. So my first opportunity, I was able to buy 3 of these mortgages on 3 different properties for a total of $10,000, which was a great deal. And unfortunately not something that you can find these days, but that was the kind of deals you can get back then. And it was worth an experiment just to give it a shot. So 2 of the 3 properties, the owners of the house lived locally. They had bought these houses as income properties, and that didn't go nearly as well as they thought it would. And now all of a sudden they're not even living there. The houses are vacant, and they're having the banks call them saying, hey, you still owe us money, all these different things. And so they were losing sleep themselves at that point. So I was able to locate the homeowners and go and knock on their door, and had all the paperwork showing that I'm the person that they need to be paying their mortgage to now. And my approach was, so I have this paperwork. This is the money that you need to pay me. However, I'm not here to collect any money. If you just deed the property over to me, I'll wipe out the loan. And the first girl that I approached, she was, a young girl. She's in her mid-20s. This seemed like a great idea at the time, and now it had just become a major headache for her. And she broke down in tears, and she was so grateful. And she's like, really, you'll do that? And until then, I hadn't thought that I was solving anyone's problem. I was just looking at it as an easy way to get properties. And that was a real light bulb moment for me too. It was like, oh, wow, not only am I getting what I want, but I'm really solving somebody else's problem. And that was a major light bulb moment. And the second gentleman, it was very similar kind of thing. He was an older fella, and I gave him the same spiel. I said, if you just deed the property over, I'll wipe out the loan. And his reaction is, okay, where do I sign? And wow, that's amazing. I didn't expect that. And so that was a real awakening for me of how we can really, in a very meaningful way, help solve somebody's problem. And then in a very meaningful way, help my business to grow. And so that was a really great realization.
So it's interesting hearing about your big light bulb moment and when it's come later on in your business and your career. But I think interestingly, if you sort of look back, you've been very open-minded. You've had a move to Korea. You've started the Curves business. Then you've shifted into the real estate or the mortgage space. Having an open mind has really been an important part of your growth and development. I think what would be interesting is how do you open your mind? What advice can you give to people on how to actually have a more open mind so they can bring forward those light bulb moments?
I think it's a fine line because on the one hand, if you have something that you're working on and then you talk to somebody, you hear from somewhere about this other great idea, and then you talk to somebody else and they've got this other great idea, and it can distract from your initial focus very easily. And so it's a fine line of knowing how much you should be focusing on your project before you start looking at any other opportunities. And it's a tough one, and it's not an easy balance, because sometimes that new project maybe could and should replace what you're currently doing. And other times, maybe that's a great thing to be doing, but maybe later. And that's something that you can do a little later. And I don't know that there's a great answer for that, but maybe just the awareness that can happen. Because when you start to open your mind, then all of a sudden you start seeing all these opportunities and all these different things. And so it can become distraction after distraction. So I think it's something that you just need to understand and recognize and decide consciously, well, this thing that I'm doing right now, it has taken this much time and effort so far, a little bit more time and effort, and it's really going to take off. And this other thing, it's great, and I'm going to get to it. And I was saying before, I actually had a binder early on where I would have these different ideas and different opportunities and things. So I would actually write it out, and I would even write out kind of a preliminary business plan. And I would stick it in the binder and be like, okay, so when we're ready for that idea, it's right there. And the reality is I didn't go back for maybe any of them, but it helped kind of get that out of me to where I said, it does. It's a great idea and it could be really cool, and we'll get to it if and when we can.
I have a book it's called My Best Ideas That Have Never Happened, where
Excellent.
at least
Yeah.
I can park something. So I think one of the unexpected parts for me today out of your story is that growth is not just about discovering what you can do, but it's also about learning what you cannot realistically carry. And for business founders and entrepreneurs, I think that's really saying you're going to have to put some ego to the side here as well. When did that become clear to you about parking some ego and deciding what you could realistically carry?
Oh, there's a lot of things. In my early 30s, I came to a lot of different kind of realizations. And that was one of them, is I can do a lot, but I can't do everything. In fact, when my children were small, we had a book, a child's book called something about Annie McRae was the character's name. And the line that we still talk to our kids about today is, this little girl wanted to do this and she wanted to do that and she wanted to become this when she grew up, and that and all these different things. And the kind of the final part of the book, spoiler alert, was not today, Annie McRae. You can do all of these different things, but it doesn't have to be today. And so just recognizing that there's time. And that's what, now that my children are older and starting to go off into real world and things like that. And same thing, they've got such big dreams and such amazing plans, and they're all great. So pick one, do that, and then go with the other, and then do that. But just recognize and realize that there is a bandwidth, and you can do anything. I strongly believe that. You can do anything, but it doesn't all have to be today. It doesn't all have to be right now. You can do this thing, and then you can move to that thing. And then after that, then you can move to that thing. And there's time. There's so much time.
When it comes to books and resources that really shaped your thinking during your personal development, are there some that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah. So my brother-in-law, again, as one of our mentors, he suggested some books for us early on, my wife and I. And so Think and Grow Rich is a classic. And I think that should be a high school reading book, but that's maybe a different topic for a different day. But fantastic foundational book of just how to think differently and realize how much power your thoughts have. I've got Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, T. Harv Eker. That was a great one. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. That was a great one. And The Entrepreneur Roller Coaster for people who are getting into business. That's a great one. Darren Hardy. So those are some I would definitely recommend to anybody who's out there and looking for something that will help them to improve their business in any way.
I feel like we've learned so much from your journey so far, Nathan. So thank you for your reflection and your advice. If I could sum up what we've discussed so far into 3 key pieces of advice for anyone listening, for me, I take out of it, don't make decisions based on fear. Use facts and information to move forward, not feelings of panic. Learn to step back and look at the situation objectively. You'll recognize whether it's time for change for you or the business, or even if it's time to walk away. And 3, you got to keep an open mind. Right? So accept that there are things you don't know and be willing to learn new skills, new possibilities, and new perspectives. For someone that's listening along right now and is in a season where the business that they have built is no longer working the way they had hoped, what would you want them to hear from you?
First, a message of hope, because yes, just realize that happens to everybody. Just because you've hit a bump in the road doesn't mean that it's all a failure. It doesn't mean that there's no hope of it ever coming back. So that would be my first thing. And then I would advise them to do that, take a step back and actually look at the business as a whole and analyze what's going well, what's not going well. And I would say not by yourself. Get some outside help, and whether that's a friend, like you don't necessarily have to pay for this help, but get somebody that can come in and you can just bounce ideas. They don't even need to understand your business, but just as a sounding board so that you can talk things through and say, well, this is working. That's not working. That I wish I could just give away. This thing is something I'd like to do. But going through it and looking at systems, looking at processes, looking at your numbers, and really just taking a day to analyze all of that and saying, okay, so if this was better, we would be on top of the world. If that thing went away, then that would solve so many problems. And just having time to actually look at the business as the business instead of just having your head down and not being able to see the forest for the trees.
And Nathan, before we finish, I'd love to ask you what we call our kitchen bench moment. When you look back now, what was the turning point that really shaped the way you think about your business and yourself?
I think it's that time back in Korea where it was the thought, I think I can do this. And once you get that idea, that can set your path, and that it's an exciting thing. And that I think the reality is, yes, you can. Yes, you can do this. And so getting to that point where I think I can, and then follow it through, because you probably can. I think you're right. So go for it and just get out there and give it a shot.
Nathan, thank you. It's been a real pleasure to learn from you today.
No, thank you very much. That was a lot of fun.
Sometimes personal development is actually about becoming more honest. More honest about your limits, more honest about your patterns under pressure, more honest about the decisions you make when fear, ego, or uncertainty start driving the wheel. Nathan's story is a prime example of the incredible business opportunities that can come from being open-minded, resilient, and more than a little adventurous. His personal development journey is a reminder that with all the diversions, roadblocks, and mountains ahead of us, the path to success is ultimately one we get to create. Thank you for joining us today on the Homegrown CEO podcast. I hope you felt inspired and energized by my conversation with Nathan. And if you're looking to embark on some personal development of your own, we have just the thing for you. As a member of our brand new Homegrown CEO community, you'll access exclusive bonus content from this and every other episode, including a deeper discussion into Nathan's mindset around the Curve's franchise decline and the biggest mistake he feels any entrepreneur can make when it comes to personal development. All this, plus exclusive tools and resources related to this episode, and a meaningful network of other professionals on a similar journey of personal growth. Head to the link in the show notes to join us today. In the meantime, make sure you subscribe to the show to be the first to know when our next episode drops, and we look forward to seeing you then. In the meantime, I've been Matt Colborn.